So,
Hi. Oops.
give me a second to plug in my headphones. Hi, I will show you the video and then very quickly remove the video. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you. You can see me, I take it.
Yeah, perfect. I'm not sure. Sometimes the internet isn't so fast, and so it breaks up the signal.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm calling from London. Bethnal Green, of all places. I don't know if you've been there, but it's East London, close to Old Street.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm right now in southeast London.
Oh, okay, cool. That's not so far at all. Is it close to Wimbledon, Kingston?
No, I'm in East Dulwich.
Oh, right, okay, awesome. Do you come down to England often?
No, this is where I live.
Oh, right, okay. For some reason, I had a sense that you were from the States and that your base was there. Um,
No, I mean,
oh,
it's a
let's
long
try.
story. I was born in Italy, but when I was 3.5, my parents and I moved to Canada, where I grew up. I was there until I was about 20,
Oh,
and
cool.
then I came over here about 44 years ago, 46 years, 45 years ago.
It feels like just
So
yesterday.
and I've managed to keep something of my accent.
Ah, okay. There we go. So it's from the from a Canadian past,
Yeah,
perhaps.
Italian. Well, I've got three passports, so you can decide what I am. I've got a Canadian one, a Italian one, and a British one.
Oh, there you go. We'll call you a kind of a Commonwealth Italian then, something
Yeah,
like that.
okay.
Cool. No, I would love to. I had a chance to dive into your website and try and get some background information, and I would just love to know about where your work is at right now and your thinking, and also what what your kind of agenda is for the event.
Right. Help me out with the event bit because I know very little about it. I mean,
Cool.
all
So,
I know is Bill contacted me. I see Bill for supervision, so
ah,
he comes to me for supervision, and at one point he said maybe 3 4 months ago he said, "Oh, would you like to do something?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." And there were a couple of things exchanged, but more than that, I honestly don't know much about. So fill me in, and then I can tell you what I could do.
cool. Well, the event is called Culture Clashes, and it explores what happens when organizational culture clashes with individual identity. And really, it's a conversation around culture, around teams, and around diving deeper into how human beings work and how they
Okay,
interact with each other, and what that thinking and that deep dive can how that can inform decision making
okay,
in organizations.
okay, okay. So, my background, as you probably figured out, is mainly in psychotherapy. I've been practicing, training, writing about psychotherapy for too long. Uh, and about, must be about 15 years ago now, uh, I had this idea of expanding what I was writing about into other areas beyond psychotherapy. So a group of us got together and we decided to see what we could apply initially to mediation,
Mm.
to legal mediation. And so we developed a program that was around mediation, that was psychotherapeutically based. And that's still running. I'm not involved in it anymore, but that's still running at Regent's College,
Mm.
and seems to be really quite successful. Uh, and then the other area that I personally got more interested in was around the area of coaching, and specifically executive coaching, partly because the clientele of executive coaching were the last people on earth who would ever go to see a psychotherapist.
Mm.
Um, and um, and so I thought, well, here's a really interesting, different group of people, and it coincided with my having some involvement with the iCoach Academy. They were running some training programs, and they asked me to come along and do some talks for them and some supervision for them, which I did and still do to some degree. And I thought what was particularly interesting about executive coaching, from the standpoint of the approach that I use, which is broadly called existential, is that approach is really focused upon looking at individuals as part of an inevitable set of relational conditions. So it doesn't see the individual in isolation, but always in a set of intertwining and inevitable relational conditions. And it struck me that that might be a useful way of looking at the way organizations worked and the kind of dilemmas that existed, the tensions between the individual in the organization and the organization, and the sense that the individual might have of belonging or not belonging, or of different strategies, or of different aspirations, or all kinds of different areas of concern and tension. And so that's been my work in when I do work with executives. It's not always necessarily focused around most of the time, as you know, it's less concerned around questions of problem solving, and it's much more concerned around questions of aspiration. How do I get to this? Or I've now reached this. What do I want to do next? How do I want to make my how do I want to make my stamp on the organization? Or what do I want the organization to move towards? So it's very future oriented in many cases.
Cool. And my thought is, if you had to describe a persona of somebody who could benefit most from listening to your experiences, your stories, your methodologies, who would they be? Where would they be in their career?
Well, in a way, the most I suppose the most ideal persona would be someone who was willing to really look carefully at what they want and what they're saying, and to really be willing to go into much more descriptive detail about what is it that those statements that they're making are actually saying to them, not just in an intellectual sense, but in a whole body sense. How do they connect to them as a whole person, rather than just at an ideological level or at a intuitive level or whatever? So there would have to be someone who was willing to be that was curious about themselves. Someone who, in a sense, wasn't necessarily looking for immediate, straight answers from the expert, but in some ways who perhaps sees himself or herself as an expert, and who's stymied at the moment by their own expertise. So it's almost like they're trapped in their own awareness of things, and they're not quite sure where to go with it.
I think that's a wonderful line. Breaking out of your own expertise.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely does. Imagine that being a central title for an article, and then it really gets people to think. Like, whoa!
Yeah.
Like, that's not something that most people encourage you to break out of. That's like
Exactly.
something that you cover in cotton wool, that you protect. But actually, the unlearning is an essential part of learning.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's pretend that I am that perfect persona. I'm curious. I'm ready to break out of my own expertise, however little expertise I have, and I want to go on this journey of unlearning, so that I can empty my mind and be ready to absorb something new.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, what do you want?
What do I want? Ah, right. What do I want? Well,
How about just emptying your mind?
I would want to learn how to be more present um, in day-to-day situations, and
Okay.
to really begin to have a more Zen-like state. And it's something that I've been working towards for a while, but
Okay.
it's something that is on a meta level for sure,
Okay.
to have more of a consciousness of
Okay.
what's happening around me in terms of people's emotions, where they're at, and to get a sense of whether the timing is right to push towards an outcome or actually to pull back.
Okay. What what makes you think, feel that you're not there?
Um, I would say that the first the first one would be that my sleeping patterns are a little bit erratic. So if I was very able to be present and very in tune with body and mind, then I would be able to nod off much with, and it often it comes with like a burst of restlessness, and then it goes back to normal. But it's, having a being more in tune with sleep, for sure. I think that there's what it makes me feel that I'm not. I would say that it's just I have several mentors that have been practicing mindfulness and
Yeah.
being very conscious for a long time, for many decades, if not more. And so, yeah, in comparison, yeah, I'm a little bit, um, I know that there's a long road on this path, and
Okay.
it's not just something that you just click. Okay, right, I'm totally present today, and it's this balance between um, letting go of your future plans, so that
Yeah.
you can be ready to go with the moment, and at the same
Okay.
time not being so consumed by the moment that you don't plan, that you don't think, and that you don't make critical choices in your life.
Okay. Have you ever had an experience that comes close to that?
um, it's a tricky one to answer. I would need to give it more thought,
Okay.
and to come back to it. I wasn't prepared to be I wasn't prepared for a coaching session, so I wasn't in a
Okay. I'm not trying to give you one. I'm
no.
just, all I'm doing
Hmm.
is giving you a sense of how I would work with you.
Yeah, okay, that's fantastic. No, like, so it's trying to, if you would then reflect back, how would you describe what just happened?
What, between us?
Yeah,
Okay. Um, from my end, I was trying to get a sense of what you were talking about,
yeah,
uh, in terms of uh, your desire to experience something that you felt you either didn't experience or weren't experiencing enough of. And I didn't have a sense of which of the two it was, so that's why I was asking you those questions. Um, and depending on, if you had said I've never experienced anything like it, I suppose some of my questioning would have been around, uh, what convinces you that there is such an experience, or
mm,
what makes it so significant to you, even though you've never had it?
Mm. So one, I have quite a few coaching friends and people that have been in the coaching world for a while. And one of the questions I always ask is, what is your questioning methodology? How do you, because it's this wonderful balance between content and no content.
Yeah.
So, and your questions are your tools, but it's the way those questions are framed. It's when to butt in, when to step back and allow it to flow, and also getting the timing right. So diving into these questions, it's at least an hour and a half conversation because of the depth and intensity and kind of detail that's needed to gain insight. You know, it's something that's quite abstract. If you were coaching me on my weekly plan and the things I was doing, then that would be a lot more transactional and a lot less and a lot easier to get to an insight. So one of the things that I'm curious about, and maybe it's something that you can bring into your talk at the event and in the article that I read before, is we all understand coaching. We all understand its merits. So on a hypothetical level, all of this stuff is it's a no-brainer, right? The better we understand ourselves, the more we go deeper, the more we're honest about what we really want, the more we can align ourselves with the organization or not. However, then there comes a question which is, okay, well then how do we master questioning? How do we really learn the trade so that everyone can be a coach and that everyone can know when is the right time to ask their colleague or their friend the right question? And so if we turn to the experts, how do we really ask questions in the right way?
Yeah. Okay. Well, my initial response to that would be that, you know, broadly speaking, I think the coach, the therapist, the questioner needs to earn the right to ask those questions.
Mm.
And it seems to me that the earning of the right is centered around the sense of mutual trust and connection and honesty that is being generated. So, in a coaching situation or in a therapy situation, my first task would be to try and co-create those conditions that we were in, so that you, as my client, began to hear your own voice more accurately and more honestly. And you could hear that I wasn't trying to distort that voice or alter it or put my voice in there. That I was really, all I was trying to do was to assist you initially in your hearing what you are saying, experiencing in as honest a way as possible.
Mm.
And in order for you to be willing to do that, I've got to earn your trust and your commitment in me that I'm not going to abuse that, and that I'm capable of staying with you as to where you are, rather than taking you where I want to take you.
Mm.
Right? So that would be the first element of it. Once we've established that trust, then I would feel that my voice could start to come into the interaction. That I, as another, would have a different, you know, I could have different perspectives or different ideas, or I could offer you some possibilities. But if I do that too soon, I suspect that my interventions would be at best really limited, because you'd just be hearing them most likely as either some kind of critique of your own position, or as a demand on my part that you do what I want you to do,
Yeah.
or all those kinds of things.
Yeah, of course.
So it's that movement from your voice to my voice to our voice.
Mm. Yeah. And how do you sense that it's the right time?
That's a good question. I mean, part of it is you take a risk. You know, you throw something in and you see what happens. Um, but a big part of it is around just the way there's a quality of being uh, relaxed in a kind of excited way.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot more possibility of humor.
Mm.
So I find humor to be really, really important. People don't use humor unless they're, you know, unless it's to attack or to feel really relaxed
Mm.
as an expression of that. So when humor starts to come into the picture much more, then I usually have a sense of, okay, we're somewhere where I'm not going to be threatening to the other person.
Mm. Of course. And so then comes an interesting question that I'm deeply interested in, which is
Yeah.
the role that Skype has to play in coaching. So that Skype has to play in coaching. So virtual conferencing, Skype. So the benefit of having Skype is twofold. One is actually you can be in the comfort of your own home.
Yeah.
You don't have to be rushed. You haven't kind of gone on a big commute to arrive somewhere in a busy cafe. You can be in a very, very safe place. The second part is you can also record the calls and listen back so that you have that complete ability to then revisit the conversation and really observe in a way that, and with the tools these days, you can look at your facial expressions, you can look at the coach's facial expressions in a way that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And then one of the things I always like to do is I always have pen in hand and I scribble. And I do it not so much because I want to capture word for word, but because that's how I think. When I'm drawing on a piece of paper, my mind is much more able to process and flow. And also then when I revisit, I can see what I highlighted and I can reconstruct the understanding. So actually, so many of my kind of consulting, coaching, relationships, or even friendships, it actually works really well over Skype. However, there needs to be that precursor to really have that feeling of opening up. And this is where does the face-to-face come in? Because it can be really difficult, especially with exec clients, to get any time with them. You know, it's like you schedules this, that. So what is the right balance so that you can leverage the flexibility and really get people so they're in the right space? Because there's no point having the conversation if everyone is not in the right space. And so is this something you embrace, or do you feel that Skype kind of loses some of the tacit frequency and energy that is exchanged?
My own personal preference at the moment is that I prefer to initially meet people face to face, and then move to Skype if that's what's desired. Whether that's entirely superstitious on my part, I don't know, but it feels more appropriate to me, largely for many of the reasons that you've given. And in the same way, while I entirely agree with you about the advantages that you outlined, all I would say is that those very same advantages that you've outlined, I can also see as real disadvantages. So, for instance, I've been, you know, for a while I've been writing around the whole notion of the effectiveness of therapy and coaching, not from a critical placebo standpoint, but from actually a constructive placebo standpoint. And one of the things that's been found in medical studies on placebo is that the placebo seems to be largely around the creation of a whole environment and setting and atmosphere, so that I walk into this space, and in walking into this different space, I am changed by it. I am open in a certain way to the possibilities that this space gives me, whether it's a medical office or whether it's a meeting point that you and I have. if I'm too safely ensconced in my usual space,
Mm.
I'm at home, I don't know whether that will dampen some of the placebo potential of coaching and therapy.
Mm. Being in an unusual space, in a space you don't know,
Yeah.
people will either open up, feeling that I've got nothing to lose, or they will close down, saying this is unfamiliar and I'm not
Yes.
sure. So,
Yes.
but then if it's too close to home, that's interesting. That,
But in either case, they will experience themselves differently.
yeah,
And certainly, this is more the case with therapy. That sense of already feeling yourself different allows you to look at the issues that you've brought from a different angle because you're already attuned differently to what you're concerned about.
it's a bit like the King's Speech, right? So
Yes.
he would
Yeah.
take him into the cauldrons of the dungeons, and then because it was so different, he could give. And then he even created the space around him where he was completely disconnected from the castle and the palace. He
Yes.
recreated the space that
Exactly.
was below.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
So I think particularly initially that might be more important than we've considered it to be. And for those reasons, I prefer initially to see people on a face-to-face
Yeah.
basis. Um, but having said that, I'm trying to remember what your second advantage was. It was you've got the advantage of we're both at home.
Yeah, yeah.
What
Well,
was the second one you
so
mentioned?
being able to record. So I'm a
Oh
big
yeah,
believer in reviewing, and so if the coach's time is valuable, or potentially the client's time is valuable, being able to then really reflect on what happened, because I always it's a bit when you read a book once. I underline it. Then I go over and I return to everything I underlined and I read it again. And then I retype it. And then in the processing of the content, real understanding and memory is built. And that is really interesting from my perspective around brain science and how we train our brains uh, to build a higher, to organize knowledge and to select and so on.
yeah. And again, I don't disagree with you. I think that possibility is really valid and really important to uh, to acknowledge. But I also see the darker side of it, or the opposite side of it. And I'll give you an analogy of that. I'm old enough that I mean I've always loved film a great deal.
Hmm.
I've loved watching films and so forth. And when I first started really seriously watching films, I was a teenager basically. And at the time, the idea of having any kind of recording device whereby I could return to the film was complete fantasy. Yeah? So when I went to see a film, okay, potentially I could go back and see it maybe once or twice or three times while it was still playing. But I had a sense that most of the time this would be a one-off event. I would go to the cinema, I would see this film, and that would be it. I couldn't access it again,
Hmm.
realistically speaking. I remember those films much more clearly and have much more of a connection to them than I do to films since then when I
Hmm.
know that I can always access them either
Yeah.
by electronic means or by DVD or whatever. The idea that I have it available to me can make me really committed, like you're saying, and I agree with you, or it can make me really lazy.
Hmm.
So that I say, yeah, I have it there. I could always go back to it.
Hmm.
And I've seen that in myself. I've been collecting Blu-rays and DVDs of films for a while now, And every once in a while I think, oh, maybe I should go see one of these films. And I go, yeah, I could, but it's there. I could do it tomorrow instead. You know, so there's always a kind of there's an open possibility that actually shuts me off.
Mm.
And my worry is that that's how more and more we're using the great advantages that we've got to us about keeping information.
Mm.
I suppose the extreme end is when you go and you go to public places and so forth, and you see people, you know, holding up their mobile phones and recording everything.
Yeah, yeah.
You just have that sense of, yeah, they're recording it, but they're not there.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they know they're recording it.
And so you miss out on the moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's the whole. I didn't have my camera when I was younger. When I was quad biking over the Drakensberg in South Africa, and there was a most epic landscape, and I was with my twin brother, and we were on quad bikes, right? It's like, and yet I stopped my bike and I stayed for 2-3 minutes because it was such an epic view. My brother was off onto the next valley, kind of wondering why I was wasting my time, but it was so powerful, and it stayed with me. And then I ended up 3 months later doing a beautiful painting on it at a workshop in London, and this was when I was 16, so quite a long time ago. But I really remember that actually, if I'd taken a photograph, it wouldn't have been such a magical memory for me, and that magical quality. You know, it's always that balance between the magic of human experience and the timeless of it, but also our data-driven, technology-driven future of how we become better every day. And it's very, you know, the ethereal argument. You can't measure it, you can't quantify it, you can't replicate it, you can't scale it. And so it's to be appreciated. It's not to be lost. But we cannot build a future on magic alone. We must also have processes and innovators. And where does that, as a coach and as a kind of executive coach, how do you bring those two things together?
Well, you know, if we were at a point where we'd been engaging with each other in a coaching relationship for a while and we'd been talking about this, I'd say to you, are you willing to just try an experiment for yourself next time when we meet, whether on Skype or whatever, that you don't do all these things. You don't record. And
you put your pen down.
And you put your pencil away. And just so that you see what it's like what you're like under those conditions. Not because from now on that's what you've got to do for the rest of your life. But just so that you have the experience of the difference. If there is one, maybe you find no difference at all.
No, exactly. So I think that what we can draw from, and the beauty now is I get to look at my pieces of paper and then recap. So I stand by this the wonderful signal that sparked me around breaking out of your own expertise, and that this workshop is about reflecting on how we can become deeper coaches, and the process of unlearning. And if we look at different potentially tools that are available to us, and actually spark a debate around that. It's like, how do we as coaches move into the 21st century? How do we adapt to complexity? How do we adapt to new studies and knowledge that is always being published about brain science and neurology, as well as our very lifestyles, or the lifestyles of clients are changing. There's so much information coming. There's so many devices. You're always on, and how do you begin to adapt your practice within organizations to these trends and to the evolution of what leaders have to face today? And that can spark an incredibly rich debate. Anytime you bring technology into a coaching conversation, people are like, no, yes, yes, no, what if? And then really saying it is not one or the other. It's how can it best serve us? And then that being a lovely article that I can put together that frames the intention of the workshop, and I think also some really lovely sound bites. And I very much enjoyed listening for sure.
Right.
How does that sound to you?
That sounds absolutely fine.
Perfect.
That sounds good.
Cool. And I'm just curious, while we have a few more minutes before the next call, is where is your passion and vision taking you today? What's the impact you want to create, the legacy you want to create? And now you're in the latter stages of your career.
Well, at the moment, I'm concentrating an awful lot on writing and writing fiction.
Ah.
I still think that possibly the nicest way of getting across some ideas is through novels. Or I'd do it through film if I was good enough to make films, or I'd do it through painting if I could paint. But writing is one thing that I think I might be able to do reasonably well. So I'm practicing writing novels.
Cool. Children's stories, or for more?
No, I'm writing a private eye novel at the moment.
There you go. And is it purely a personal creative endeavor for yourself, or is it about sharing?
I've got I meet with a Skype group of writers every month, and we have to present things to each other, and so we criticize each other's work, and we're all published authors, but me not in fiction. The other two are, and in some ways, yeah. I mean, I suppose it's not central to me, but it's certainly a name that I would like to write something that was good enough to be published.
Yeah.
Publishable.
Fantastic. Well, one of the things I always build up my bucket list of adventures that I want to live and explore.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I run my own business called The Exponentials, and it was born out of a coaching conversation where my shiny goal of what do I really want is I want to live a life of adventure with a tribe of exponentials. And then that became my business and my brand, and flowed into the career and the life that I have now. And I'm always seeking for how to push my experience and understanding of all dimensions of life. And one area for sure that I would love to dive into is to try and write my own Pixar animation. What would it be? And how would I bring it to life? And I found a theme that one day that I would definitely dive into, which is this idea of looking at life as a rainbow, not as a black and white. And the adventure of someone who learns to see the world in color.
Yes.
And it's very easy to look at things in black and white, but actually that the world comes into color when we change the way that we look. And so playing on that idea of color and canvas and the moods, the emotions, and this idea that the story that we're told about what success is, what happiness is just one layer. It's one type of happiness. It's one type of experience. And it's not about saying this is better or worse. It's about saying that there are multiple experiences, and we might be selling ourselves short if we only look through this lens, because then we only see two colors. We only see black and we only see white. And so that would be a wonderful, maybe it's called The Artist or the Canvas, and it kind of combines The Little Prince with The Alchemist in a very visual story that tries to kind of dive into also some of the philosophies of our age, right? From the Zen Buddhist monks to the uber successful capitalists that are addicted to the adrenaline rush that comes from power. And this feeling of like, for some people that and it's there are all these spectrums. This is a spectrum of our life, and the greatest gift that we have is the ability to choose where we want to be on the spectrum at any one time. So that would be fun to write one day.
Have you ever seen this film called Pleasantville?
No, no.
Okay, you might like it. It's set in a world where everything is black and white, and for various reasons, color starts to be brought into the world.
Cool. I'll watch the trailer after we finish.
Yeah.
Cool.
It came out about maybe
1998 is
1998.
Yeah. Cool. I'll give it a watch. So
give it a watch. It's a nice film.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's one of the things I always keep is you can't do everything all at once, but you can enjoy taking an idea as far as you can do it in the moment, and then you write it all down, and then so that you can talk about it. And then if some spark comes up, then you bring it back into the consciousness and see where it goes. And then you'll always have a lovely dynamic set of adventures to be drawing on every day.
I mean, I've got a really good friend who had this amazing idea for a novel. I mean, it was really an incredible idea. But in order to work it through, he had to understand some theories of physics. So he started writing this novel, reached this point, and then has spent the last 25 years becoming a physicist, training, teaching, doing experiments, and so forth. He's finally retired from that, so he can now go back to the novel.
Oh, wow.
Knowledge that he needed to have in order to write it.
Oh, wow. Now that is some pressure that he has to deal with now. Some pressure. There's no excuses anymore. It's wow. Like it's 25 years worth of research. So you you better get it right. You better get it right. Exactly. Oh yeah, I'm just joking. Just joking. No, that's awesome. No, well, I would love to hear more about that. Your novel. If you ever need a second pair of eyes and you're at the point of sharing, I would love to read it.
I'll keep you in mind.
Sure. Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to talk. Bye.
Okay.
Have a good rest of the day.